Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to our fifth session of Global Business. Today we're going to look at ethics, CSR, and sustainability in international business. So by the end of today's session, you should be able to articulate and explain the rationale and challenges of ethical behavior in international business and the institutional variations in ethical standards, CSR, and sustainability issues. And finally, you should be able to explain how firms react to institutional pressures to engage in ethical behavior in their international operations. Now, before I get started, I want to clarify some definitions, because when we talk about ethics, CSR, and sustainability, we can't avoid this important, well, let's just register for your attendance first, then I'll move on. This is the most important thing, right? No, otherwise, so your effort at least should be rewarded at some point, right? So I really appreciate your attendance for every single session. Okay. You see, somebody online, after I saw the QR code, immediately left the session. So what's the point coming just for the QR code? Yeah. Okay, are we done? Yeah? Okay, let's move on. So when we talk about ethics, CSR, or sustainability, so this is a term we cannot avoid, corporate governance, which is a system of managing, or the system of procedural processes through which a company is managed, directed, or controlled. So it provides means through which companies undertake ethical behavior, CSR, and sustainability. So a complicating factor is the use of third-party suppliers or contractors, because some of them might behave badly. And most companies nowadays are incorporating CSR, ethical behavior, or sustainability into their mission and planning, strategies, and everyday operations. So now in the context of this module, when we talk about corporate governance, we only focus on three main dimensions: ethical behavior, CSR, and sustainability. So this is completely different for the same term, corporate governance, in the context of other modules or disciplines or subjects, especially in finance accounting. When we talk about corporate governance, we primarily examine the board of directors or the structure, how the company is governed by different shareholders. But we forget about that. In the context of global business, we only focus on corporate governance in terms of ethical behavior, CSR, and sustainability. Is that clear? Okay, so we don't talk about board of directors. I don't want to see anywhere in your coursework you're talking about executive directors, board of directors, whatever, or shareholders. I don't want to see that in your coursework. Yeah, I only want to see these three key dimensions in your coursework. So, the question is, why should companies engage in ethical behavior in their international operations? I'm going to show you a video, and then you perhaps can discuss with your neighbors what is the rationale for firms to ensure ethical behavior in their global operations. Bear with me.
A court in China has imposed a nearly $500 million fine on British pharmaceutical giant GlaxoSmithKline. The company was found guilty of bribery. CCTV's Ritu Dixit has more.
I will obey the verdict. I will not appeal because I feel my rights will be respected during this process and trial. And I would again like to apologize to the Chinese people for my actions.
An apology that may not go down well with the people of China. A court in the southern city of Changsha found GlaxoSmithKline guilty of paying bribes to doctors and hospitals to use their drugs. A one-day secret trial also found its former head of operations, Mark Riley, guilty.
GlaxoSmithKline in China is guilty of bribing non-government personnel and will be fined 3 billion yuan. The fine takes effect immediately after this verdict, and money should be handed in within 15 days. Second, the defendant Mark Riley committed to bribe non-government personnel and will be given a 3-year sentence with a 4-year reprieve and will be expelled from China.
The fine is the biggest corporate penalty ever assessed in China. GlaxoSmithKline immediately issued a statement in Mandarin that accepted the verdict and apologized to the Chinese patients, doctors, and hospitals, and to the Chinese government, adding that it will continue to learn from this. This is not the first time that Glaxo has faced allegations of wrongdoing. In 2012, the company paid $3 billion in fines to settle an investigation in the US about how it marketed its drugs and reported its data. It is also facing charges of improper conduct in Syria, Iraq, Poland, Jordan, and Lebanon. This latest judgment sends a strong signal to other multinationals in China. Ritu Dixit for CCTV.
So this is actually the most, let me go back. Yeah, stop share. Let's go back to the slides. So this is actually the most expensive corruption scandal for multinational firm doing business in China in history so far. And at the time, I think GlaxoSmithKline was fined for 320 million pounds back in 2015. And I guess even worth more given today's inflation, rising living standard. So what GlaxoSmithKline did was they actually bribed every individual at each level of the Chinese healthcare system to try and win market share and agree higher prices. And I still remember about 7 years ago, I went back to China for holiday, but unfortunately I checked into the hospital, and I was shocked at the time because all the medication prescribed by the doctor, they were all from GlaxoSmithKline. But at the time, there's nothing I can do because my time is quite tight, and I don't have any other choice. So this is GlaxoSmithKline. So now the question is, so why should multinational firms ensure ethical behavior in their international operations? You can discuss with your neighbors. Well, so you can see it. To ensure transparency. Yeah, we have an online answer, ensure transparency. Why do we need to ensure transparency then? Prevent corruption. Why do we need to prevent corruption?
To have more positive attitude around the brand.
To have more positive
Picture around the brand.
Around the brand, so you want to
Reputation.
to maintain or build this good reputation and enhance perhaps the brand. That's a good answer. Any other
Probably ensure the quality, product quality.
Yeah, ensure the product quality. Very good. Any other points?
For investors as well. Investors are more interested in.
Yeah, attract more investors. So do you want the CEO from GlaxoSmithKline? Do you want Mark Riley? You do? He bribed everybody in, well, from government officials to officers in China. Yeah. Do you want the CEO like Mark Riley from GlaxoSmithKline? Any other answers? Avoid going to jail. That's a good point. Yes. Avoid legal actions by the government, local government authorities. Yeah. So you don't want to go to jail, and you don't want employees like the CEO of GlaxoSmithKline. Any other answers?
Examine the challenges.
Examine the
Challenges.
challenges. You mean examine the challenges? In which sense? Or avoid challenges?
Learn how to handle and all the things.
Yeah, so you learn how to do business
He organizes the day one.
yeah, so to learn how to do things in the host country. Excellent. So you need to obey the local laws and regulations. Excellent point. Any other answers? So now think about the scenario. If we all undertake activities that harm the natural environment, what would happen? If we all undertake activities that harm the natural environment, what would happen?
Conflict of interest.
Cancel
Conflict of interest.
conflict of interest with who?
Among the employees, among the investors, stakeholders, everyone.
Okay, among everyone. That's an intriguing point. Please.
Because then the shareholder wants a company to operate as long as possible. So if the ESG practices are not good, it means that the company is not striving for longer return.
Yeah, to ensure the long-term survival and return of the company.
Yes.
By building a good reputation as have an ethical or socially responsible firm.
Yes.
Good. Let me have a look. We have another answer online, which is bad reputation, carbon emission, UNs wouldn't like you. Okay. So interesting. So it also draw attention to the supranational organization as well. Yeah. So let's go through them. So first, the reason why I ask you is, previously, do you want an employee like that CEO of GlaxoSmithKline? Certainly, you don't want an employee like such. So good CSR actually help company keep and recruit good employees. Yeah. It helps company keep and recruit good employees. And also, as we discussed previously, a good ethical behavior can help differentiate the firm and enhance its brand. Yeah. And also, the reason why I asked you is none of us undertake activities that protect the natural environment, primarily because a good ethical behavior helps company cut costs. Okay. And especially when the company takes steps to reduce packaging, recycle, economize on energy usage, and reduce waste in operations. Okay? And it can also help company avoid increased tax actions, regulations, and other legal sanctions by the local government authorities. Because as I mentioned, if we all undertake activities that harm the natural environment, so the government will have to hire additional employees to either design new regulations or new policies or institute new laws and also enforce these regulations and laws. And all of these activities incur cost. cost will be financed by increased taxes paid by companies and individuals. Okay, that's why another reason why should companies ensure ethical behavior in their international operations. Right. So this is a rationale for firms who ensure CSR, ethical behavior, sustainability in their operations. Now, what are ethics? So ethics are moral principles and values actually govern the behavior of individuals, firms, and government regarding right or wrong. Okay, so ethics and appropriate behavior transcend all aspects of international business and figures prominently in management decisions about financial performance and competitive advantage. However, corruption is commonplace in some countries, especially those lacking transparent business systems. But most multinational firms seek to ensure ethical behavior in their international operations, but the more advanced multinational firms emphasize not only ethical behavior, but also CSR and sustainability. So an integrated approach towards ethical, socially responsible, and sustainable behavior provides companies with competitive advantage, including stronger relationships with customers, suppliers, employees, shareholders, and communities where they do business. Okay? So corruption is the abuse of power to achieve illegitimate personal gain. And bribery is common and may often take the forms of greasy payment and small inducement. They are intended to expedite decision making or transactions, or in some cases to gain favor. So what is the difference between bribery and corruption? So what is the difference between bribery and corruption?
You do bribery to prevent corruption or cover it up.
Yes, very good, Chatali. Think a little bit further, the difference between bribery and corruption. What is
Corruption is when it's both parties, like both the parties are at fault, but bribery is one party trying to cover up the other party's fault or its own fault. Like mainly its own fault.
Yeah.
So like.
Think a little bit further. What you're saying is absolutely right.
Corruption is when those in power are acting wrong, and bribery is when you pay for those in power to act wrong.
One's not.
You're almost there. Almost there. Almost. Almost. Bribery is the action or behavior. Corruption is the outcome. Yeah? So they are the same, but bribery is the action, is the behavior. Corruption is the outcome. Okay? So in reality, about 30% of the multinational firms believe that corruption is a major or severe concern in their global operations, according to the finding from latest research. Now, let me show you this. What I'm showing you on the slide is a corruption perception index. So the index is an aggregate indicator, a sample of data from various sources over the past 2 years. So all these data sources measure the extent of corruption in terms of the size and frequency of bribe in both the public and political sectors. And actually, all these data sources actually rank multiple countries simultaneously. And the evaluations that result in this index are obtained from two groups: business leaders and country experts, including resident and also non-residents. So can you actually find your own countries on this index? So what about India? Where do you think it should be? More likely to be. So you see the horizontal axis is the corruption score. So the greater the value of the score, the more corruptive the country is. Do you think? Where should it be? Near South Africa or Mexico? Any clue about India? Where should India be? No answer. We have some of you from India, right?
It shows very high, like 80 as of 2021.
Yeah, 2021, 80. Perhaps, yeah. Perhaps near Somalia. So what about Lithuania? Lithuania, do you think?
Lithuania.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's around United Kingdom.
Where?
Around United Kingdom, maybe around 30.
30.
No, maybe less, like 25.
Yeah, 25, near the US. Yeah, about between the UK and Chile, perhaps.
I don't know. Not sure.
Not sure. So,
I saw that we are like 15 from 28 European Union countries.
all right, 15. Okay.
So somewhere around there.
Somewhere around, yeah, somewhere.
Middle of the-
Between 20 and 30, maybe. So, what about Thailand? Do we have Thailand? No, not Thailand on this index. What about Thailand? It's going down, going up?
Down.
Down. Bottom near, not near Iraq or probably, oh dear. That's really corruptive. What about Nigeria? No? Do we have anybody from Nigeria? I remember three people, clearly, even their name.
Pretty high.
Okay. What about Nigeria should not have, let me see the message. What does he say? Oh my God, Nigeria should have a score of, Shopee says should have a score of 100. The most corrupt country. I'm not surprised because I heard many interesting stories about the corruption in Nigeria. So I'm not surprised. Maybe Shopee is right. Yeah. So, okay. So China is on this list. Oh, actually, yeah. What about China? I forgot even, I thought this is not China. What about China? Any clue? We have so many people from China now. You can't escape. You must have a perception. Any answer? Do you think? Where should China be? Any idea? Sentenced to death. Maybe about 40. That's too low. My understanding is 40 is too low. So some of you from China, you must have a clue, yeah? Because they are sentenced to death. So this means the law enforcement is stronger than other or tougher than other countries, but it does not necessarily mean. Yeah. Any clue? We have so many people from China. So where should China be?
It actually shows 66 out of 180 and 45 out of 100.
So this ranking is actually back in 2014, not the latest ranking. So now it's improving, but at the time, it's not as good as now. So you should volunteer your answers. So many people from China. Come on, give me a clue. I'm not gonna moving on if you don't answer my question. Okay. I need answer from China. Someone from China. Because we have so many of you from China. You need to engage in the classroom discussion.
50.
50. Okay. Any other answers? 40. Okay. So between 40 and 50. Good. So in 2014, even worse. Now let's have a look at the latest ranking. So some countries obviously are improving, and some countries are getting more corruptive. So I think, well, obviously Denmark is also improving. It's already top and it's also improving. Maybe China is improving as well. And now it's 45 as Chatali just checked briefly. So China is improving, primarily due to the enforcement of anti-corruption law in recent years, and also the power of the new government in China. So anyway, so just for your own interest, you can have a look at this transparency.org website. And this might be important or for your coursework, just to give you a sense of the level of corruption in your chosen home or host countries. So to give you some examples of inappropriate corporate conduct abroad, so falsify or misrepresent contract or official document, pay or accept bribes, kickbacks, or inappropriate gifts. So do you know what is a kickback? A kickback is a negotiated form of a bribery in which a commission is paid to the bribe taker in exchange for services rendered. Tolerate sweatshop conditions or abuse employees. Do you know what is a sweatshop? Or have you ever come across sweatshop? So a sweatshop is a negatively connoted term that refers to any working environment that is considered to be unacceptably difficult or dangerous. So employees, for example, might work for long hours with very low pay, regardless of law mandating overtime pay or minimum pay. So child labor law may be violated, and sometimes sweatshops might contain hazardous materials or situations, so employees might be subject to employer abuse. So this is a sweatshop, okay? And use false advertising or other deceptive marketing. Engage in deceptive or discriminatory pricing, and deceive or abuse intermediaries in the channel. So this is primarily associated with the use of third-party contractors or suppliers. So your contractors or suppliers, they might operate sweatshops or use child labor in their own factories. But what happens inside their factories is completely out of your control. Yeah. So, however, if they behave unethically, and they've been caught up, this will substantially tarnish your corporate reputation. So if you're going to use a foreign supplier or partner, make sure you choose those behave ethically. Okay? So finally, undertake activities that harm the lecture environment. I believe we all understand, right? So areas ethical challenges arise in international business. So unethical management practices actually are very common, especially in countries that appropriate regulation or sort of professional business standards, which is a corporate culture that advocates profit over sustainability and human welfare. For example, the 2008 global financial crisis was resulted in part because senior managers in banks neglected to devise safeguards against making bad loans or offering high-risk securities. Sometimes lax management standards can also give rise to dishonest accounting practices in which companies typically provide deceptive information to investors, customers, and local government authorities. The global sourcing raises concern about ensuring human rights and protecting the natural environment. For example, some companies might operate sweatshop factories. And in fact, many companies nowadays, they operate factories that generate much pollution. So the use of third-party contractors or suppliers is challenging, especially for multinational firms such as Nike and Philips, with thousands of foreign partners operating a very broad range of cultural and belief systems worldwide. So deceptive marketing in advertising and selling that are intended to lure people to buy their product. Marketers tend to make false claims about the quality and effectiveness of their product. However, advances in modern communication technologies allow these fraudulent marketers to easily target victims in foreign countries. So the transnational nature of such scams make it difficult for law enforcers to catch and prosecute perpetrators. So finally, defective or harmful product or packaging that actually affect the public health, safety, or the natural environment. For example, every year millions of electronic products, from cell phones to laptop computers, are discarded. A product that should be recycled ends up in landfill. And excessive product packaging actually generates pollution and consumes energy and natural resources. So for example, excessive use of plastic packaging is harmful because plastic doesn't easily decompose. So the amount of plastic waste is steadily increasing both on land and in the oceans. Okay? So these are the areas where ethical challenges are more likely to arise in international operations. So ethical standards varies from country to country. So when doing business internationally, there are two ideologies multinational firms seek to adopt. So one is what we call relativism, which is to believe the ethical truths are not absolute, but vary from country to country. According to this perspective, a good rule is when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Okay, the other is so-called normativism, which is to believe that ethical standards are universal. Individuals and companies should seek to uphold them consistently around the world. To give you some examples of variations in ethical standards, in China, for example, counterfeiters may often publish translated versions of imported books without compensating the original publishers or authors. So in part of Africa, accepting expensive gifts from suppliers is acceptable. And in the United States, CEO compensation is always 100 times greater than a low-ranking subordinate. Okay, so alcohol advertising is banned in France, moderately banned in Sweden, but is allowed in countries such as UK and China. So both countries actually, in fact, have a binge drinking culture. Finland and Sweden ban advertising aimed at children, but the practice is accepted in other parts of Europe. Okay, so these are the examples of variations in ethical standards. But you need to remember the two ideologies that multinational firms use to ensure the ethical standard. One is relativism, the other is normativism. Okay. So what is corporate social responsibility? So corporate social responsibility is the manner of operating a business that meets or exceeds the ethical, legal, commercial, and public expectations of employees, shareholders, customers, and communities where they do business. So core CSR values include avoiding human rights abuse, upholding the right to join or form a labor unions, and avoiding workplace discrimination, and eliminating compulsory child labor, protecting the natural environment, and guarding against corruption, and undertaking philanthropic effort. So to give you an example of companies that engage in CSR activities, so Brazil's oil company Petrobras developed CSR programs that aim at reducing poverty and child labor, as well as providing employees with providing education for people with difficulties or some sort of disabilities. So for example, in Africa, Petrobras built hospitals and schools, whereas in Colombia, Petrobras developed programs to train local community health workers. And in Nigeria, Petrobras collaborated with a local non-governmental organization to provide HIV prevention education.
But it's like a very big scandal.
Petrobras.
Yes.
Yes, this is a positive side. They haven't been caught up yet. It's like GlaxoSmithKline. So they also do some good things.
They are caught up by it. I mean, it's like investigation going on.
At the moment, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes. Sometimes, not all companies, they are doing good things and bad things. Just on one side. So sometimes, in some countries, they behave ethically. In other countries, they don't, because ethical standards varies from country to country. Yeah?
Yeah, because they did money laundering.
Yeah, bear in mind the ethical standard, the ideology companies adopt. So for Petrobras, they adopt the ideology as relativism. So they don't behave exactly the same in different countries. That's why in some countries they behave ethically, in other countries, as you mentioned, it might be Kotak. It's like GlaxoSmithKline. They also do good things. Okay? So it's hard to measure how exactly this company behave, or you classify this company is an unethical company, and this company is a socially responsible company. So you have to take a sort of strike the right balance between relativism and normativism. Okay. So what I'm showing you now is a pyramid of ethical behavior. After complying with the local laws or regulations, which is at the bottom of the pyramid. So the management should ensure the company's activities follow a high ethical standard, which is in the middle of the pyramid. So occasionally, foreign laws might conflict with or fall short of home country laws. For example, in the United States, the Occupational Health and Safety Administration specifies numerous regulations regarding the labor and employment conditions. So when they expand abroad, most American companies believe that it is sufficient to comply with the local laws or regulations and follow some basic ethical standards. But the more progressive multinational firms emphasize not only ethical behavior, but also CSR and sustainability, which is on top of the pyramid. Okay? So CSR is all about giving back to the society. So for example, Starbucks provides healthcare benefit for employees who work for the company more than 20 days per month. So over the years, Motorola has donated over 16 million low-cost mobile phones to developing countries. So the company developed a mobile phone system for disease management in Africa, through which local health workers can file patient reports and check drug supplies. So this helps professionals in poor areas deal effectively with disease outbreaks, medicine shortages, and health maintenance. So GlaxoSmithKline, for example, this time they behave in an ethical way. So GlaxoSmithKline sells its HIV prevention medication to customers in developing countries at or below its production cost. So the company offers nearly 90% of its vaccines to customers in developing countries at non-profitable prices. So by contrast, Shell, you know Shell, the oil company, experienced revenue loss and protest due to opposition to its oil drilling activities in Nigeria, so which are seen as harming community interests and generating toxic water. Okay, so Walmart actually experienced sales loss and massive protests in India due to concerns about the company's market entry may harm small retailers in the region. Okay, so let's have a look at sustainability. Now, sustainability is all about meeting humanity's need without harming future generations. So sustainable companies typically pursue three types of interests. Economic interest refers to a company's economic impact on the localities where it does business, such as job creation, wages, and public work. Social interest refers to how the company performs relative to social justice, such as avoiding the use of sweatshops and child labor, and as well as providing employees with benefit. So environmental interest refers to the company's impact on and harm to the natural environment. Okay, to give you some examples of companies engaged in sustainability activities. So the Canadian aluminum giant Alcan has invested huge sums to develop clean and fuel-efficient manufacturing technology. So Alcan has reduced its greenhouse gas output by 1/4, while increasing its productivity by 40%. So Alcan is still in the process of installing additional technology that would further reduce its toxic emissions and enhancing its energy efficiency in its melting plants. So the supermarket chain Tesco, we all know, right, uses wind power to generate electricity in most of its UK stores and has installed massive solar panels on many of its facilities in the United States. So the company actually substantially reduced its energy usage in its warehouses and operate a low pollution transportation in its supply chain activities. So the company attempts to measure the carbon cost of each item it sells in order to reduce the pollution burden of serving customers' needs. For example, when we go to Tesco, customers are usually rewarded for bringing your own reusable shopping bag instead of plastic ones, because you have to pay extra money to buy a plastic one from the shop. And senior managers, in fact, the bonuses are partly based on their waste and energy reduction target. Okay, so this is another example of sustainable behavior. So achieving sustainability often requires companies to be flexible and creative. A good example is Coca-Cola, who had to deal with the water sustainability challenge around the world. As water resources dwindled, Coke began to experience conflicts with communities and other water users, especially in India. To address such challenges, Coca-Cola developed a sustainability program that goes well beyond the efficiency and compliance need alone. So the management devised global projects that protect water resources and ensure access for clean drinking water. So Coca-Cola successfully mobilized the global community to deal with the ever severe water crisis around the world. Okay. Now, show you something interesting. So what I'm showing you now are the labels, actually, tin tuna labels accumulated during the lockdown period. So pay attention to the part I highlighted in yellow or circulated in red. You might be able to see more clearly on your own slide. Yeah, pay attention to the part I circulated in red or highlighted in yellow. So you might see some dolphin safe or dolphin friendly. Yeah. So this is actually Greenpeace 2014's Clean Tuna League Table in the UK. So Greenpeace is a non-governmental environmental organization with over 40 offices around the world. So there is an international coordinating body based in Amsterdam, Netherlands. So Greenpeace classified the tuna and tuna-related products sold in the British market into 3 categories according to the fishing method. So there are 2 main types of fishing methods in tuna fishing. One is what we call the PADS. PADS are destructive fish aggregation devices that could cause indiscriminate bycatch of other sea animals in the fishing process, such as sharks, rays, or even turtles. But the advantage of this fishing method is it's cost efficient and you can achieve scale economies. And the other method is what we call pond line, which is the most desirable fishing method, which couldn't harm other sea animals in the fishing process. But the disadvantage is the cost is high, the efficiency is low. Okay, so you have to fish the tuna one by one, basically. So you have the clean tuna. On the one hand, you have the clean tuna category. This is one extreme. So tuna and tuna-related products sold in this category are made of 100% pond-line tuna. On the other extreme, you have the dirty tuna category. So the products in this category are made of tuna caught by 100% PADS. In the middle, we have the murky tuna category. So this is a combination of clean and dirty content. Okay. So in the clean tuna category, we have Sainsbury's, Co-op, M&S, Waitrose, and Morrisons. So do you think who is the winner in the clean tuna category? You know this supermarket, right? You must know. There is I think there are all these 5 supermarkets. They are in Norwich. All these 5 supermarkets in Norwich. So do you think who is the winner in the clean tuna category? Any ideas? Waitrose? Okay, that's a good bet. Any other clue?
M&S?
M&S, yeah. So the winner is in the clean tuna category, so M&S. Because at the time, M&S not only sells its own brand tin tuna 100% pond line, But all the tuna-related products, sodium, net, are made of 100% polymer tuna, especially for sandwiches. Yeah. So in the dirty tuna category, you have Princess, John West, Oriental, Pacific. Do you think who is the winner in the dirty tuna category? Princess. Oh,
Aldi.
Aldi. There's no Aldi. There are only 3.
No, I know.
It's in the next ranking. Wait for the next slide. You'll see it. So who is the winner in the dirty tuna category? You got Princess, John West, Oriental, Pacific. Do you think? Any clue? You tried the tin tuna before, right? You must try it before. It's very common. You can see them sold in Tesco, Sainsbury's, everywhere. So the winner in the dirty tuna category is John West. Yeah? So the winner is John West in the dirty tuna category at the time. So do you think in the murky tuna category we have Asda and Tesco? So do you think who is the winner in the murky tuna category? Tesco, excellent. The winner in fact is Tesco because although Tesco sells its own brand tin tuna 100% polymer, it actually sells products from the dirty tuna category, such as John West, Princess. They are very common. You can find them in Tesco, right? So noticeable is, remember the labels I showed you previously. You might see dolphin safe or dolphin friendly. According to the US Consumer Union, these labels do not guarantee dolphins are not harmed in fishing process because verification is neither universal nor independent. Okay, let's have a look at what happened 4 years later. Actually, so 4 years later, they replaced the 3 categories with the percentage of sustainable content, and also introduced new measures in the ranking, especially the practices they put in place to enforce workers' safety in the fishing process. So this round, the winner is Waitrose. And the loser is actually John West. So Waitrose is the winner primarily because Waitrose not only sell 100% polymer tuna, but also they put in place practices to protect workers' safety during the fishing process. Okay, and the ranking is done in every 4 years' time. So there should be a ranking this year, but up until now, I couldn't find any. And it's very unlikely to have another ranking this year. And this might be a good sign, because if all firms behave ethically, there's no point having a clean tuna league table anymore. Yeah. So if there is any, hopefully by next round of ranking, we wouldn't see any tuna or tuna-related product with less than 80% of sustainable content anymore. Right. So this is an example of how firms engage in ethical or sustainability activities in their international operations. So remember, do you still remember the institution-based view I mentioned in the second lecture? Okay, so have a look at the slides and reflect on formal institutions and institutional frameworks, because I'm going to introduce a very important analytical framework to explain institutional variations in CSR and sustainability. Have a look at the institution-based view before I move on. Especially pay attention to what are formal institutions and what is called the institutional framework. So remember, this is a very important, analytical framework you can use in your coursework to analyze the impact of home country impact, formal institutional impact in terms of CSR strategies in our host country. So remember in our third section, we measure the outcome of government intervention using the level of economic freedom. or by the level of government intervention in organizing economic activities. So similarly, if we classify countries according to the level of government intervention in organizing economic activities, so we can have three main categories. On the one extreme, we have liberal market economy, where there is little or no government intervention in organizing economic activities. So example of countries using this approach is the United States. So we call them leading or liberal market economy. So US is example of leading liberal market economy. On the other extreme, you have centrally planned economy in which there's 100% government intervention in organizing economic activities. So the government acts as dictator in organizing economic activities of the country. I could find hardly any examples of countries who are still using this approach except North Korea or China, Malaysia many years ago. Yeah, they are centrally planned economy. So in the middle, you have coordinated market economy where government acts as a coordinator in organizing economic activities with a moderate level of government intervention. So examples of countries using this approach are UK, France, and Germany, or some of the Western European countries. Now, in leading liberal market economies, such as the United States, firms have a high degree of discretion over their own activities. So companies are self-disciplined, and the market to a large degree are self-organized by businesses rather than the government. So the culture system values individual freedom, but also giving back to the society. That is to share the wealth with others. So the features of the institutional context induce companies to voluntarily assume responsibilities for societal concerns. So we call this kind of countries explicit CSR and sustainability countries. So by contrast, in coordinated market economies such as UK, France, and Germany, CSR and sustainability are embedded in the institutional frameworks, such as the laws, regulations, policies, as well as social welfare system. So regulations are more specific, and the government provides a wide range of services to the public, financed by the taxes paid by individuals and companies. So this is supported by cultures that consider many aspects of the welfare state as the responsibilities of the government and expect individuals and companies to help government with their responsibilities by first paying the taxes and obeying the rules and regulations. So we call this type of countries implicit CSR and sustainability countries. So noticeable here is the difference between implicit and explicit CSR and sustainability countries is whether CSR and sustainability are embedded in the institutional framework, such as laws, policies, or regulations. So if they are, CSR and sustainability are embedded in the laws, regulations, policies, we call these countries implicit CSR and sustainability countries. Otherwise, we call them explicit CSR and sustainability countries. Are you with me? Is that clear? Good. So this is also called the Martin-Moon 2008 framework. So if you're interested, and you can have a look at the paper, Martin-Moon 2008. Okay. Now, how should firms react to institutional pressures to engage in CSR and sustainability? So there are actually 4 different types of strategies multinational firms use. So first, we have reactive strategy. Is you deny responsibility, do less than required. So for example, in the early 1970s, when Ford marketed Pinto car, knowing its gas tank has a special design flaw that could make the car susceptible to rare earth pollution. So setting high costs, Ford decided not to recall the Pintos and add improvements. However, for several years, frequent incidents happened. People were killed and burned in Pintos. So Ford belatedly recalled all the Pintos under intense pressures from government media and consumer groups. Then we have so-called responsive strategy, is where you admit responsibility but fight to do the least that is required. So for example, in the early 1990s, Nike was charged for running sweatshops. But these accidents took place in its contractors' factories in Indonesia and Vietnam. Because Nike didn't own or manage these factories, the company initially argued that we don't make shoes. What happened inside another company is not our responsibility. However, consumer pressures mounted and legislators considered legal change that could force the industry to act. So Nike started acknowledging a legal or ethical responsibility that extends beyond the legal boundaries of the firm. The next one is so-called the accommodative strategy, in which you accept responsibility, do all that is required. For example, in 2000, when Ford's Explorer vehicle equipped with Firestone tires had a large number of rollover accidents. So Ford evidently took the painful lessons from its Pinto fire fiasco in the early 1970s. So the company initiated a speedy recall. So finally, we have the proactive strategy, in which you anticipate responsibility, do more than required. Okay. For example, in 1990, BMW anticipated a new responsibility associated with initiatives by environmental movements to require the car industry to take back cars at the end of their lifetime for recycling. So BMW not only designed easy to dismantle cars, but also they signed up a few high-quality car dismantler companies as part of an exclusive recycling infrastructure. So further, BMW actively participated in public discussions and succeeded in establishing its own approach as the German national standard for automobile disassembly. So after other automakers later on were required to follow BMW's lead, so they had to develop the necessary technologies and infrastructure from scratch. So this is a proactive strategy. So now you know what kind of strategies multi-annual firms use for engaging CSR and sustainability in their international operations. You also know how we differentiate implicit and explicit CSR and sustainability countries. The question is, what strategy to use in implicit and explicit CSR and sustainability countries? You can discuss with your neighbors, and in the meantime, we can have a break for 5 minutes and come back. Okay? Very interesting. So you can discuss with your neighbors. Think about what kind of strategies to use in implicit and explicit data using the countries. Yeah? Do they have to use responsive or reactive or proactive strategies in implicit or explicit CSR sustainability countries? Okay, any answer? Any answers? Do you think what kind of strategies to use in implicit CSR or sustainability countries? If CSR and sustainability are embedded in the laws or regulations, what kind of strategy to use? So if CSR and sustainability are embedded in the laws or regulations or policies, do you think which of these strategies should a multinational firm use? Accommodative, yes. Why not proactive? Or why not responsive?
Because it's lower than accommodative, responsive, and proactive is higher than. So it's accommodative is perfect. We are not go high and we are not going low.
Okay, so if you go higher, perhaps it might incur more costs. Yeah. And if you go lower, it's not competitive enough. Yeah, very good point. Any other answer? Do you think companies should use proactive strategy regardless they are in the implicit or explicit CSR and sustainability countries? Please.
I think it's good to do it proactive because in this environment, the consumers care about that companies take responsibility.
Yeah.
And it would be like, so they get more popular.
Yeah, it's an excellent point because being a proactive, using a proactive strategy will help company build a good reputation as a globally responsible firm. Regardless you are in the implicit or explicit CSR or sustainability countries. Recall the ideology. The two ideologies I mentioned, one is the normativism, one is the relativism. So companies use proactive strategies everywhere, regardless of implicit or explicit CSR or sustainability countries. This type of company typically adopt a normativism ideology where ethical standards are universal. So the company seek the normativism everywhere in their global operations. For those perhaps use accommodative is those companies use a relativism ideology in their global operations. But in fact, so first thing you need to think about is whether CSR and sustainability are related to the firm competitive advantage. So some companies, they benefit from proactive CSR policies, whereas others don't. So for example, like companies such as Walmart, McDonald's, or Audi, they're competing in a very much price-sensitive market segment, are less likely to benefit from proactive CSR policies than companies such as M&S, Waitrose, who are competing on the basis of their brand image. Yeah. So you need to think about firm competitive advantage, whether they are related to CSR or sustainability. You also need to bear in mind whether CSR and sustainability are the common practices in some industries. Yeah? Can anyone give an example of an industry where CSR or sustainability are the common practices in that particular industry? Yeah? It's very easy. Think about the industries where CSR and sustainability are the common practices in some industries, especially the highly regulated industries.
I think in IT in general, because it's very easy to reach good CSR.
Yeah, but industry.
Clothing.
Clothing, yes. Clothing is one of them. Avoid the use of child labor, avoid running sweatshops, right? Yeah.
What about supermarkets? Because they have so much wastage, and if they can prevent it, then they can achieve it faster.
Yeah, supermarket.
Like Sainsbury's has very strong policies of
Did
encouraging
I see any other examples? The oil exploitation industry. That's another good example.
Yes, even Shell has very strong policies for CSR.
Yes, Shell, yes. Especially with natural resource exploration, yeah. And the other two highly regulated industries so in our daily life, everyone can tell. Automobile, the carbon emission, yeah? So this is typical. And also think about the food and pharmaceutical industries. CSR and sustainability are the common practices, yeah? Especially something we eat inside our body. You have to ensure CSR and sustainability, and something to cure your disease. This has to have a high ethical standard, yeah? So in these industries, regardless you are in implicit or explicit CSR countries, you have to uphold a high ethical standard and use the proactive strategy because everyone is doing the same. Yeah. So this is the answer for the first argument, first question. And the next question. Are ethical behavior, CSR, and sustainability good for multinational firms' financial performance? Again, you can discuss with your neighbors. And this shouldn't be a difficult question, right?
Yes, it is because they can then pitch it to the stakeholders and investors and get higher investments.
Yeah, but in the meantime, it increase your cost. Yeah, sometimes you engage in comparison to companies who just follow a good ethical standard, just for complying with the basic ethical standard. You always spend much more as well. So if you calculate your investment and cost, yeah, and pay attention to the financial performance. question also used to be an exam question as well. And also the previous question. They're all previous exam questions. Any answer? Any answer? Or put it in that way, anybody think CSR for behavior and sustainability, they are not good for firm financial performance? Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you think they're not good for firm financial performance. So you all think they are good for firm financial performance, really?
I think in the long run, for sure.
But in the short run, you see, that's an excellent point. It's an excellent angle to look at this question. You split the question into two angles, long-term and short-term. So certainly long-term CSR policies over a long-term period have a positive impact on firm financial performance. But in the short run, or if you look at the short-term or temporary initiatives, they might not necessarily have a positive impact. Yeah, CSR policies only benefit a firm if it can build a credible reputation as a socially responsible firm. However, this doesn't happen overnight. Yeah, so we only talk about long-term have a positive impact, but short-term or temporary initiatives don't. Okay, so this is CSR and sustainability or ethical behavior. This is a risky investment, a risky and expensive investment. Yeah, so if you're not pursuing a good reputation, it's not worth investing in the long term to build a sort of credible reputation as socially responsible firm. And you better follow the basic ethical standard. Make sure you don't break the law, and that should be the bottom line. Yeah. So unless you are from large corporations like Siemens or in a certain industry, GlaxoSmithKline, so you do have to enforce your ethical behavior and follow a superior ethical standard in global operations. Okay. Excellent. Okay, you see Shopee answered the same point. Yeah, the long-term effect. So you can read your case now. Yeah. So the case is about Siemens. Just for your own interest, this is a list of international programs to enforce ethical behavior in global operations. Just for your personal interest, you can have a look at them after the session. Okay. Have you got a copy of the case?
We are saving paper.
Okay, that's good. Well, then you're consuming electricity.
Yes, but I think it's better for us.
So which is cheaper?
Yeah, but we are not creating waste.
That's a good point to take away from today's session, isn't it? Actually, you can also have a look at this video, but it's in German. Do we have someone understands German in this room? It doesn't matter. There's a translation out there. But the video is in German, but there's a subtitle translated in English. Yeah.
Es war uns allen klar, dass es ungesetzlich ist. Also von der ethischen Seite wird das Thema eigentlich nicht so gesehen. Uns ging es darum, das für die Firma zu erledigen, den Bereich am Leben zu erhalten. Die vielen Tausenden von Arbeitsplätzen, die an diesen Umsätzen gehangen haben, nicht zu gefährden, oder zumindest nicht über Nacht zu gefährden. Und dann sind wir immer davon ausgegangen, dass die Firmenleitung uns decken wird, was ja dann tatsächlich leider nicht eingetreten ist. Im Nachhinein stellt sich heraus, dass in praktisch allen Bereichen der Siemens AG, also in irgendwelchen Geschäften, wo man mit Lampen und sonstigen Themen arbeitet, das Thema Zahlung von Provisionen oder Bestechungsgeldern zu bezahlen üblich war. Und man hat es ja auch gesehen, wenn Manager querversetzt wurden aus anderen Bereichen zu uns oder von uns in andere Bereiche, dass auch alle sofort Bescheid wussten, was da abläuft. Also ab einer bestimmten Ebene im Konzern war das sicherlich allgemein gut.
Okay, so you can read your case now. Let me go back to this. And also in your coursework, remember you need to identify the threats and opportunities. And if you want to get a high mark, it's better to think a bit further beyond the threats and opportunities. Think about how could the opportunity help you overcome the threats. You see, think a little bit further beyond the threats and opportunities, and think about the relationship between the threats and opportunities. Sometimes new opportunities could help overcome the threats or weaken the threats. Okay. But this is not compulsory, just if you want to get a higher mark in your coursework, whatever.
Are you planning to go on a holiday during when we write, like in August?
Why? Your deadline is September.
Yeah, I'm asking if I email you.
Oh yeah, of course. You're welcome. Yeah, I will. Don't worry. Even I'm on holiday, I'll make sure I read your email and reply. Yeah. But very unlikely I'll be on holiday. So good news. But my suggestion is, try to start cracking on your coursework as early as possible. Don't wait until the last minute, because since if you send me an email a day before your deadline, I can't guarantee, the reply you have enough time to, read my reply, or if I could reply on time. Yeah. So try to plan earlier. Yeah. Don't wait until the last minute. So have you finished reading? Yeah? So what about the first question? What does the case suggest is the value of ethical behavior? Any answer? Any answer? Since you finished reading the case, so what is the value of the ethical behavior in the context of this case?
To maximize sales and profits.
Yes. So it helps company increase their market share, maximize their profit margins. Anything else? Think about the rationale for firms to ensure ethical behavior. We discussed at the beginning of the session. So it helps company keep and recruit good employees, right? So again, you don't want the CEO from Siemens or GlaxoSmithKline in China, yeah? And it helps enhance company's brand and gain market share. Anything else?
It's easier to start business in a different country.
Yes, easier.
Yeah, here it says that in the US scrutiny is great.
Yeah, so it helps companies to build a good relationship with investors and local communities and customers and also local government authorities as well. But in general, you need to think about the rationale for firms to engage in ethical behavior for this question. And so what did Siemens gain by introducing controls to minimize the likelihood of corruption? So what did Siemens gain by doing so? What is the difference if Siemens didn't do anything, as opposed to introducing controls to minimize corruption? Any answer? Excuse me. No answer. Then what's the point for Siemens to reintroduce controls to minimize corruptions? Would you buy Siemens product? after you heard about the scandal?
No, it's like a negative
Yeah.
reflection of the brand.
Yeah, negative publicity, yeah. So now Siemens is making an effort to introduce control to minimize corruption. So, any answer? It's so quiet. Come on, there isn't actually right or wrong answer. You need to volunteer your answers. So it helps Siemens re-establish trust and the brand loss, yeah, by introducing controls to minimize corruption. So the second question, most countries lack adequate laws or enforcement to deal with bribery and other forms of corruption. Why is this? And how do countries benefit from a strong rule of law that minimizes corruption? So why some countries lack adequate laws or enforcement to deal with bribery and other forms of corruption? Why? Especially in emerging or developing economies. So the law enforcement for corruption is not strong. Why is this? Why?
Because they think corruption is the only way out to solve some problems.
So corruption might be effective in the country. If you don't bribe those government officials, it might be difficult for your firm to win new projects or establish your operation there, right? So maybe in some countries, corruption or bribery is the norm of doing business. Yeah. But again, why corruption become the norm?
It was easier to follow the corrupted route than the authentic route.
Mm.
Because things got done quicker and with less government intervention.
Yeah, so it's easier. It's easier to establish your operation by engaging in corruption. But at both, well, if you look at the center of this, the center of the question is why some countries they have a high levels of corruption. Why, they are so corruptive, especially in those emerging and developing economies. Why?
Weak,
Because there's a weak law.
Poor administration.
Poor administration. Think about the relationship between transparency and corruption. So there's a negative relationship between transparency and corruption. So the more transparent the country is, the less corruptive it is. And so the next question, how do countries benefit from a strong rule of law? By minimizing corruption. Now think about if you are the foreign investor, do you prefer to do business in a country that is very corruptive, or as opposed to a country with a very low level of corruption? What kind of country would you prefer to do business with? Low corruption index, right? Less corruptive countries, right? So it's easier for multinational firms to establish operations in countries with high levels of transparency and low levels of corruption. So countries therefore benefit by introducing a less corruptive or introducing anti-corruption laws or strong rule of law that minimizes corruption. So by doing so, countries can attract foreign direct investments and stimulating local economic development because multinational firms prefer to do business with low level of corruption and more transparent business systems. So the next question, do you think Siemens will penalize enough for its corruption or not? Raise your hand if you think it's not enough. Only one person. Why?
Because 284 million was much lesser than their annual revenues of over 70 billion. More than 70 billion.
So they gain more by doing so because the fine is much less than what they gain. by engaging in corruption. That's a good point to analyze this
So
question.
it was just very easy for them to just bribe and like get out of the situation and actually make things right.
Yeah, so it's too easy for them to earn money. Any other answer? There's no absolute right or wrong answer for this particular question, as long as you can justify your answers. Any other point? So if you think about, in some countries, if corruption is a norm, it might be difficult for Siemens to establish this operation without bribing the local government officials. So in this sense, Siemens might be penalized enough. Okay? So it doesn't matter whatever your answer is, you should be able to justify your answer. Okay? Now, what can government and other organizations do to discourage firms and others from engaging in corruptive behavior? So what can government do to prevent corruption?
What happens when the government is corrupt?
Depending on the government. Yeah, if the government is more corruptive, then they wouldn't do that. Yeah, they would encourage corruption, become more corruptive. Yeah. Any other answers? Government can make the fines. Yes, that's a good point. We have very good answer online. Let me see. From Sophie, government can make fines recurrent, perhaps every year, until the company show more transparency and reduce corruption in its activities. So precisely, the government could institute stronger anti-corruption laws and penalties. Yeah. So if the anti-corruption laws are tougher and the penalties more expensive, perhaps you can reduce the frequency of corruptive behavior. Yeah. So the last question, some argue because ethical standards are lax in many countries, Siemens and other firms must pay bribes in order to obtain new business. So do you agree with this view? Raise your hand if you agree with this view. You all disagree. Why? Why? Any reason? Now I'm not going to release the answer. Now, state differently. When doing business around the world, it is generally better to emphasize normativism or relativism. So raise your hand if you prefer relativism. So when in Rome, do as Romans do. Only one person prefer relativism.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay, if you're not sure, then it's relativism. So raise your hand if you think companies should focus on normativism. So ethical standards are universal. You should uphold a high ethical standard wherever you do business. 1, 2, or most of us think you should uphold or you should focus on normativism. So actually, in a sense, it can give yourself some flexibility. So it's better to strike the right balance between relativism and normativism, especially in countries where the local ethical standards are questionable.
No, then normativism.
Okay, you change your mind. So we all agree with normativism. But in reality, indeed, there are some countries, such as Nigeria, very hard to win new business if you don't engage in bribery. Unless you choose not to do business in this kind of country, but if you decide to enter this kind of market, you need to strike the right balance between normativism and relativism. But in countries whose ethical standards are questionable, you do need to make sure you follow a superior ethical standard and avoid all possible negative publicity and capitalize on the local market goodwill. Okay, so precisely the answer is strike the right balance and give yourself some flexibility, and depending on the kind of institutional context, if the ethical standards are questionable, maintain superior ethical standards. Yeah, avoid negative publicity as much as possible. Okay? So thank you very much for coming for today's session. I look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Okay?
See you on Monday.
Also ask. Okay. So this is the QR code one more time. If you forgot to register your attendance. You're welcome. See you on Thursday. Okay.